the ability to kill.
I've got something pretty, baby. Something is ailing me.
If you sang the song the way it was written, and you march along to the beat of the drum, someday soon you gonna wake up singing, the battle is over, but the war goes on. Everybody plays, follow the leader, but what if the leader picks up a gun? Remember when you jumped to the 8 o'clock whistle? The battle is over, but the war goes on. If you close your eyes when you hear the thunder, and you cry in the rain and smile in the sun, who do you fool but me and you, brother? The battle is over, but the war goes on. If talk was money, you'd be a millionaire. If thoughts could kill, there'd be nobody here. So many thinking evil and talking jive. It's only true love keeps this world alive. If you sing the song the way it was written, her face in a corner. She's holding down the groove. Everybody's doing a second line, dancing all around the room. Now Papa's in the kitchen. I wonder what he's fixing. It sure is smelling good. He's throwing everything he's got into the pot. He's gonna feed the whole neighborhood. The hammer party's still going on. We're gonna rock until 'cause we'll be going strong. Come on in and make yourself at home, because the party's still going on. Well, and nobody's thinking about the hard times. All your worries just fly away. When you're moving your feet to that funky beat and the band begins to play, you can forget about all the bad news and how the wind may blow. Just come on down to Camp Street, y'all, and let your troubles go. They have a party still going on. We're gonna rock until the break of dawn. You won't get us on the telephone, 'cause we'll be going strong. Now come on in and make yourself at home, because the party's still going on. They have a party still going on. We're gonna rock until the break of dawn. You won't get an answer on the phone, because we'll be going strong. Now come on in and make yourself at home. We're gonna have ourselves a whole lot of fun. Now come on in and make yourself at home, because the party's still going on.
Well, I know you got 'em. I got 'em too. I got the blues tonight. Yes, I know you don't love me now, baby. I know the reason why. Because you got somebody now, baby. You treat me like a child. You say, see you in the... Oh, yeah, that's all.
Welcome back. I'd like to call this Tampa City Council meeting to order. If we could please have a roll call.
Vieira.
Here.
Goods.
Here.
Carlson.
Here.
Dingfelder.
Here.
Citro.
Here.
Miranda. And Maniscalco.
Here.
We have a physical quorum.
All right, we will go to item number 58, which is our last remaining item on this agenda for today. I see the legal department is on. Ms. Wells, will you be presenting on this?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I will. Would you like me to continue?
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, City Council. For the record, Kate Wells, Chief Assistant City Attorney. I thought it would be helpful to briefly recap City Council's action on April 1st and how it relates to the item before you. 2 weeks ago, City Council approved Resolution Number 2021-273, declaring its intent to amend the city's comprehensive plan, and directed staff to submit the amendment to the Planning Commission. You may recall the amendment is to the future land use element, land use category matrix, and proposes to remove the ability to utilize FAR for single-use residential development consisting of dwelling, multifamily within the urban mixed-use 60, community commercial 35, and community mixed-use 35 land use categories. The plan amendment was filed with the Planning Commission earlier this week to be included in the May amendment cycle, and tentative hearing dates provided to us include a Planning Commission briefing and public hearing in the months of July and August, City Council transmittal hearing in September, where we would transmit the text amendment to the Department of Economic Opportunity for review and comment. And then with an anticipated City Council adoption hearing scheduled on January 27th of 2022. By separate motion, City Council directed the legal department to present the necessary legal documentation which would prohibit the city from accepting rezoning applications which utilize the FAR calculation for single-use multifamily projects in the UMU 60, CMU 35, and CC 35 future land use categories. During a recent City Council meeting, we discussed the possibility of processing the plan amendment under the pending ordinance doctrine. For those council members that may not be familiar with the doctrine, it holds that an application for a building permit or development order, such as a rezoning application, filed on or after the date when a local government has publicly declared its intent to change its zoning scheme, to be denied or held until after the enactment of the new zoning ordinance. There is a decision out of the 4th District Court of Appeal which held that the pending ordinance doctrine did not apply to a proposed change to the local comprehensive plan because zoning and planning have different functions, and because Chapter 163 of the Florida statutes explicitly states that the adopted plan has full force and effect until the new plan is in place. Although the 2nd District Court of Appeal, where the city of Tampa sits, has adopted the pending ordinance doctrine, it has not addressed the specific issue of whether the doctrine applies to plan amendments. Accordingly, if City Council wishes to suspend rezoning applications during the period of time the plan amendment is being processed, it is our recommendation that City Council adopt the proposed interim development control ordinance. We are recommending this approach in an abundance of caution, given the different decisions between the 4th DCA and the 2nd DCA, as well as the number of inquiries we've been receiving from the public and the land development community. If the ordinance is approved, it will be effective June 1st and remain in effect for 270 days, which is the equivalent of 9 months. This period of time includes the anticipated adoption hearing in January of 2022 and the statutory 31 days before the plan amendment would become effective after approval by City Council. If this is acceptable to Council, the ordinance should be placed on first reading at your next meeting on May 6th, and then advertised for second reading and adoption during the evening meeting on May 27th in order to be approved and in effect on June 1st. I'm available for any questions.
Councilman Miranda, then Councilman Goods. Please unmute yourself.
I'm doing that right now.
No, you're good. Go ahead, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Wells, I really appreciate everything you said, and I'm asking you if you can please present that with words that the individual like myself can understand. I understood what you said, but when you said from the district court to that court to this court to the other, I just want you to explain what it means. You can do something, you can't do something, how can you do it? Can you still do something when it's still in effect?
Absolutely, Councilman Miranda, thank you. So the pending ordinance doctrine, which has been discussed by City Council during a few meetings now, would allow City Council to, or the city to hold applications for rezoning while the plan amendment is being processed. And that is doctrine that has been accepted or adopted by the 2nd District Court of Appeal. That is the DCA that any challenges from the city of Tampa would go to. There's another District Court of Appeals, the 4th District. They looked at the idea of that doctrine and whether or not it would apply to the adoption of a plan amendment. And it decided in that instance that the local government could not rely on the pending ordinance doctrine to suspend the processing of rezoning applications while their local comprehensive plan was being amended. And the court in that case suggested that had that local government intended to avoid any controversy, it could have adopted a moratorium if that was the intent of the court, rather than relying on this pending ordinance doctrine. So if City Council wishes to suspend the processing of applications while this plan amendment is being processed with the Planning Commission and ultimately comes back to City Council for a tentative adoption date in January of 2022, it is our recommendation, rather than relying on the concept of the pending ordinance doctrine, that City Council instead formally adopt the interim development control ordinance that was filed for your consideration.
So that means then, and then the total geographical area of the city land-wise, that under that, any project that's UMU 60 or CMU 35 or CC 35 land use in that categories, including single-family units, you would not have any FAR or so forth involved in it?
If approved, we would suspend the processing of rezoning applications for those single-use projects that rely on FAR for development within those future land use categories. It would not prohibit, however, developers or property owners from moving forward with that same type of rezoning application based on density. So like in CMU 35, they would be permitted up to 30 units to the acre. In UMU 60, I believe it's up to 50 units to the acre. So they could still process those applications based on density, just not FAR. Alternatively, they file an application for a mixed-use product.
So then, one last question, Mr. Chairman, I'm finished. So that means that you can continue manufacturing or building construction in these areas minus the FAR?
That is correct.
Thank you very much. I got it now. Thank you.
Councilman Goods and Councilman Dingfelder.
That was kind of my question, Mr. Brandon. Thank you for that. Always the legend comes through with us again, because I'm kind of confused with what the developers are saying about no one knew about this transpiring. We've been talking about it, and the citizens have been talking for a while. So to me, it's disingenuous for the developed community to say they knew nothing about this. We just did this out of short notice. I think that's unfair to the citizens. And I don't think that's right, because we've been talking about this. I guess my issue is this. The plan amendment process. How long does the plan amendment process takes with the Planning Commission?
So as I explained, the amendment was filed this week and will be included in the May cycle. The amendment would then be scheduled for a briefing before the Planning Commission in July, and then for a public hearing in August. It would then come to the city in September for transmittal to the Department of Economic Opportunity. And we would anticipate, based on that timeline, that we could schedule the adoption public hearing before City Council on January 27th of 2022.
So that's why.
So approximately a process.
All right. So basically, your 9 months that you're saying that if we went with this resolution ordinance today, you're getting that grace period of that 9 month period that would follow up with the actual Planning Commission adoption if adopted, correct?
Correct. The plan amendment process has been initiated, and if it is council's decision to suspend the processing of applications during that period of time, you would want to move forward with the ordinance that we have filed for your consideration. Alternatively, you don't have to move forward with that ordinance and just allow the planning process to continue.
Okay.
And then deal with the issue when it comes back to you for transmittal and then final adoption in January.
But if we went forward, developers or whoever can still develop, they just can't go over the density portion, correct?
If you adopt the ordinance, the interim development control ordinance, developers could still develop a single-use product under the density. Alternatively, they could move forward with a mixed-use concept.
I don't see what the real problem is then. We have a lot of options on the table to try to get to the same end result. I'll be honest with you, it's still the same period of time. So I don't understand in my mind, hearing what you're saying, you still can move forward. If we don't move forward, we're still saying we've already put the train has already left the station to go to the Planning Commission still. So I'm just not really seeing what the big fuss is at this particular point. But I yield back, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
It seems that the options are that we can move forward with sending it to the Planning Commission, but we don't have to move forward with an ordinance. It can be a two-part, there's different, or we can move forward with vote or not.
Still
but-
going.
Councilman Dingfelder and Councilman Vieira.
Well, Mr. Chairman, procedurally, that's true. But legally, I think without the ordinance, we're not putting those developers on notice, and they could continue to use the next 9 months to process everything the way they've been doing. So if we're serious about doing anything at all, I think the ordinance is important. But I do agree, I don't know who said it, but I do agree that I think Councilman Good stated, that the developers' objections to me sounds like the Wizard of Oz, lions and tigers and bears, oh my, okay? This is not that big a deal. This is not an absolute moratorium by any means. If you have and Kate explained it very well, if you have a CMU 35 land use category, those developers can still come in, and get, or at least ask for a rezoning at that level, either 30 or 35 units, depending on I think they start at 30, and if they meet some other bonus criteria, then they could get up to 35. All we're saying is don't come in with that FAR calculation that often takes them up to, what is it, Ms. Feely, like 40 or 50 units per acre on occasion. And I don't think that's unreasonable. Every single one of us is getting barraged with emails and correspondence and phone calls from people all over the city saying, we don't have a handle on traffic, on evacuation, on flooding, et cetera, and we are granting, or at least considering these rezoning applications at a very, very, very high density, and that we need to slow it down a little bit until some of these studies are done, especially these flooding studies that are going to be happening in south of Gandy. So, I don't think it's not a horrific, infringement upon property rights or anything else. If it was, legal counsel would tell us, and they would warn us that this could be a risky proposition, and I don't think that we've heard that. I think it's a very conservative response to a very serious problem that's been stated by many, many, many neighborhoods. But I did have one question for Ms. Feely. I think we talked about this offline last week. Is this FAR has not been around forever, has it? I think this FAR calculation was something that didn't we talk about this as something that came up in the last 10 years or 15 years or something like that? It's not like it's been around forever. Am I correct, Ms. Feely? Where'd she go?
She was just there.
Or Ms. Wells, if you want to answer. Oh, there she is.
Councilman Jane Felder, Abby Feely, Development and Growth Management. It has been since the 80s, the FAR.
Since the when?
The 80s, the late 80s, when the plans first went into effect. The bonus has modified over the years. That's what I was talking about. That bonus. Well, that's what this is all about, is using the FAR as a different way to calculate your bonus density. I thought we concluded that came into play like in the 2007 or 2008 or something like that. Well, the bonus went from being 3 of 7 to 3 of 10, and then to an actual dollar figure for bonus. But through our research, none of the projects south of Gandy have actually executed bonus. They've been achieving density above that which was planned through the utilization of the FAR.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate that. Like I say, Mr. Chairman, I don't think this is that big a deal, but I do think that if we're going to do anything, we need to do the ordinance and do them hand in hand. So at least the message gets out to the development community that we're serious about some of this. Otherwise, we've wasted a lot of time.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Vieira.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple quick questions, if I may, that I was writing down, and I'll give my thoughts on it in a bit. With plan amendments, has the city tried to do this where we, and I may be using the incorrect legal terminology, but we're starting a plan amendment process and then we seek to implement the effects of that plan amendment prior? Have we done this maybe I wasn't paying attention, but I don't think we've done it since I've been here. In any recent time, has the city sought to do this?
Yeah, I can address that from the period of time when I was here between 2001 and 2006. and was responsible for processing plan amendments. I don't recall
Okay.
that an interim control ordinance was adopted during the period of time of that processing. And this is, since I've been back a little over 18 months, this of course is by this council the first time we've discussed it. I don't know if Abby, if you recall in the interim, if that's been utilized?
We, when we were looking at the accident incident potential zone with McDill and the density limitation down in that area, they attempted to do that. It didn't pass. We have used it, obviously, when we do pending ordinance for text amendments is more what I believe this council is familiar with when we have used this mechanism. Text amendment would come before you, and from the period of time that would then be the pending ordinance. So more so in the land development regulation standpoint than in the comprehensive plan standpoint.
Okay, thank you. And maybe I misheard, I don't remember who said this. This density bonus provision that we're looking at scaling back, I mean, so last time we started to push forward the text amendment on this, as I recall, I guess 2 weeks ago. Did I hear correctly that no one's taken advantage of this south of Gandy, or did I mishear that? I don't want to make a misstatement.
So what's been occurring south of Gandy is in these mixed use categories, the comprehensive plan says you may either use density or floor area ratio, whichever is more advantageous. And that a floor area ratio utilization does not require a bonus. So if you can develop up to a 1 FAR, for example, in the CMU 35, and I use the example of an acre often because 43,560, that would get you 43,560 square foot building. If you divide that by 1,000 square foot unit, you're getting 43 units, which in the same land use category, a density only gets you 30 units the acre. If you want a bonus, you have to pay for the gap in between 30 and 35. So what's been occurring is through the utilization or the allowance, which the code currently has for utilization of FAR, people are achieving or projects are achieving density that is beyond what was planned for. So at the 43 units an acre, there are 13 more than what was planned for at the 30 units an acre, but it is not a bonus because they are within the allowable FAR. So there's some unintentional consequences which have arrived from the utilization of FAR, resulting in projects that are substantially more dense than what was planned for.
Thank you.
And
Anybody else?
Councilman Vera, if I may respond and supplement my response with regard to the use of this type of ordinance while a plan amendment is being processed. I just wanted to confirm that while the pending ordinance doctrine has been utilized when we're amending Chapter 27 of the code, implementing a plan amendment through a moratorium before it's formally adopted has not been utilized by the city historically.
Anybody else? All right, hearing none, what is the, is there anything else, Ms. Wells?
No, sir.
What's the appropriate procedure that you're looking for, Ms. Wells, to move both of these forward?
Well, the plan amendment has already been filed with the Planning Commission, so the only issue before you is whether or not council wants to move forward with the interim development control ordinance. If you do, we would need a motion today to place it on first reading during your regular meeting on May 6th.
And that's my motion, Mr. Chairman.
All right, this is a motion from Councilman Dingfelder for the IDCO as abbreviated by acronym. Do we have a second? We have a second from Councilmember Goods. Yes, sir, Councilman Vieira.
I just wanted to give my thoughts briefly on this, if I may, because just for the sake of the public watching this, I guess it was, and correct me if I'm wrong, 2 weeks, I think it was 2 weeks ago, we voted 7-0 on proceeding with the plan amendment before the Planning Commission to get this thing started. You know, I've always taken the position that when it comes to the many, many demonstrated challenges that we have south of Gandy, as well as throughout many parts of the city of Tampa that are experiencing growth and whatnot. That includes parts of North Tampa, New Tampa, et cetera. That there's a number of things that we can do to address that. One thing I've always cited, including with a meeting with our friends in the south of Gandy neighborhoods a couple weeks ago, is the plan amendment process, which I supported a couple of weeks ago, as well as I always say a couple of other things that I wish we would, talk about concurrent in this conversation that I think are, our friend Councilman Goods always says, don't tell me what you can't do, tell me what you can do.
That's right.
We're doing something today that maybe we can do. Whether we should or shouldn't, that'll be up to this council. But there are things that we can do to address the real challenges that are south of Gandy that require, just as this does, by the way, a level of courage, whatever you want to call it and whatnot, in terms of coming out with something. That includes infrastructure improvements that are obviously, they cost money. That's in the budget process. And, you take a look at a lot of the challenges in growing areas like south of Gandy as well as New Tampa and other areas. That's infrastructure. Infrastructure is a big deal. We're talking about that with, roads, talking about things like stormwater, talking about public safety, et cetera. Another big one, which is an obvious one, is transportation investments. In 2018, I was proud to endorse the All for Transportation penny sales tax. I supported putting it back on the ballot in 2020 as a replacement safety net sales tax, and I'll support it in 2022 when, God willing, it's before us again, given those challenges. Not an easy decision, but something that we certainly all should do whenever it comes to challenges of growth. When we're talking about roads, when we're talking about mass transit and infrastructure, et cetera, I think those are really good ways to do this. Putting forth a plan amendment and then putting forth something that, and I don't want to put words in people's mouths, but something that isn't often done with immediate implementation of it, sort of betrays a deliberative process that I think we have to have with something like this. I think that we all ultimately support the plan amendment, but I think we ought to have more scrutiny on immediate implementation of it. There ought to be more scrutiny. There ought to be more deliberation on that issue. And a lot of folks say we've been talking about this for a year and a half. We have, but south of Gandy. And I want to remind people, this is something, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that's going to be citywide because of legal requirements. I think about UT, I think about areas at USF, et cetera. Has outreach been done? We're implementing this. I just think a little bit more deliberation is something that is reasonable under the circumstances. And I think that's certainly something that's worth saying. So just my thoughts on it, if I may. Thank you.
Sir. Councilman Goods.
Ms. Wells, have we done that? Have we done the outreach? If this is going to be a citywide, I know the E-Board folks and some of the other areas are talking about it, and I know in some of my areas, density could be utilized because we need some housing to go on and so forth. So has this been discussed with other communities, or we've just been concentrating on the South of Gandy folks? And that's the first thing I have.
The plan amendment that you directed us to file with the Planning Commission 2 weeks ago would be citywide.
Okay.
It would be in the UMU 60, CC 35, and CMU 35 land use categories throughout the city. So this ordinance that is before you tracks that exact same language. So it would be citywide within those future land use categories.
Okay, that's what I need to know. So it's not just South again, it's going to pertain to everybody, right, at this particular point, correct?
That's right.
That is correct.
Well, Mr. Chairman, where I look at this, and I'm glad Ms. Feely kind of explained the FRR and the density, and it's what I call a special play, where you're allowed to do something, but should you be doing it? It's kind of like I used to have a football play, gentlemen, that the quarterback wouldn't go under center. He'd come up, and one of the players would come over and tap him on the shoulder and say, hey, I need you to change the ball, and look at the official. And the center would take one full motion, hand the ball to the quarterback. He'd run, he'd jog to the side like he's bringing me the ball, and I give him a signal to go. And he goes for a touchdown and scores. This is how I kind of see this situation with the developers and the South Agani folks with this development, how Ms. Feely explained it. And it's kind of like, again, the FR and the density. Well, if I do density, I got to pay, but if I can get this FR situation, I slide on the radar and score the touchdown. So I'm going to sit back and see how I'm going to vote on this. But again, it's difficult on both sides, but in the end, I believe it will work out, though.
Councilman Miranda, and then Councilman
Thank
Dingfelder. I
you.
saw your hand, sir.
Mr. Goods, I've heard a lot of things in my life, but either you designed that play or somebody designed it against your team and they scored.
I had an old legend like yourself gave me that play, and I used it several times until they made me stop using it because they said I was intimidating and making the kids feel
I want
bad.
you want to add some middle life into this thing. What I'm looking at is, I've heard a lot about evacuation, and I agree with all that. The only problem is, even if you do your evacuation 100% correctly, according to the rules and records, how you're supposed to do it, there's so many variables. First, it's a hurricane, you got 2 or 3 days to leave if you really want to do it right. And then what about all these neighboring communities around us, including those in the city of Tampa, including those around the area? You got people from the south, from Gibsonton and Rawson, and you've got people from the north, all over New Tampa that live in the city limits, and you have people in the unincorporated area that have to leave, and all the way cities up. If you have a tragedy somewhere, guess what? Nobody's leaving, or very few are going to leave. So I understand all that, but look at the expressways now. At 3:30 to 5:30, you try to get on that expressway, and you try to get just from West Shore Boulevard to Fowler Avenue. That only takes you a few minutes, but at that time, it'll take you 35 to 40 minutes without a hurricane, without a tornado, without any disruption of services. So what I'm looking at is something that's citywide, and if I read it right, it's the same status quo minus the FAR for that period of time. What happens when this becomes an ordinance, if it goes all the way through the hearings? And how do you reverse it back if you have to? I believe the FAR was put in because we were dormant in population increase, and the city is a business. However, it's a public business. So what I'm saying is very, very carefully say that in any business, if you're status quo and you are satisfied with not increasing your customer count by 1, in essence, you're dying. Any city that does not have a population increase, guess what? It's also dying. Any city who hasn't made some commitments to change for the future will not make it in the next 50 years. So I'm trying to do the best I can to make it fuel something for the betterment. I'm having a lot of discussion in my mind, which is the best way. There's a lot of variables here that we do not control. We don't control the weather. You don't control the population shift. You don't control the people moving down and say, hey, go somewhere else, because you don't want to do that. When you look around, it's not the only people that are coming in from the north that are staying here. It's that the kids that used to go away to college and go somewhere else are now wanting to come back and live in the same city with their parents and grandparents and family. And that's part of our increase, and thank God that's happened. So you look at these things and you say, what would I do if I change the rules? And is the FAR used in no one's told me what percent of development comes through the FAR. Can we answer that question? If there's 40 developments that are happening, how many of them, is it 100% that use the FAR? Or is it less, or what is it? I don't have an answer to that.
Ms. Wells?
I
or
ran
Ms. Feely?
Abby Feely Land Development. I ran all of the applications for the past 5 years, and it varies by land use category. I pulled out the ones that did just multifamily, so there's a combination. A handful of them had multifamily and a non-residential use. Some of them just had the multifamily. In the UMU 60, many of them used density because it's up to 50 units the acre. in the CMU 35 and the CC 35, the majority of them used FAR. But I have to give you the exact numbers. I don't have that.
That's what I'm looking for, and I appreciate your answer, but I need more specific as far as percent-wise. Like if you're looking for an interest rate at a bank, you may have 0.002 and somebody's 0.2. I don't know. So those are the things that I'm interested in to find out where we stand. I want to make sure that it's enough that are using it so that we can say, listen, this was done to enhance population to move in, to increase our population, and we're getting close to the maximum that we can stand. And that's where I'm at.
Well, and I think I reported when we came before you just a few weeks ago that several projects, and they were not south of Gandy, in the CMU 35 where they would be allowed up to 30 using density without a bonus, were at over 100 units the acre by using FAR. So it was more than double, more than triple, in some cases. One project was at 137 units to the acre. And our highest land use category within the city, which is the regional mixed use 100, that is where you get the 100 units the acre by right. There is no tier because that is where we are looking to direct growth. So this is really looking at those impacts that have been felt due to the utilization of the FAR.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. And we'll wrap it up. Councilman Dingfelder, is your motion?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to respond to Mr. Vieira real quick on an important issue. Louis, I think what you said makes a good point. I think you've said it in the past. If you're trying to fix one thing and then you go off and mess something else up, and I know that's your legitimate concern. But here's the deal: is there is a mixed use exception here. Okay, all a developer has to do, no matter if they're developing in Ybor City or Armature or some other place that we might be impacting by this, all they have to do is include a component of mixed use. And I just confirmed this morning with our legal staff, that component could be very small. You could have a 100,000 square foot project and put in 1,000 square foot little convenience store, and all of a sudden you are not going to be impacted at all by this ordinance and by this comp plan amendment that we're about to pass. So again, lions and tigers and bears, I think they're overstating it. If it's a CMU category, it's meant to be used as a mixed use. But then they opt not to, or they do it on a very, on another basis. But the bottom line is as long as they come in with some type of level of truly mixed use, no matter how small, we still have to consider it. We don't necessarily have to approve it, but we have to consider it. So we're not stopping that type of development in Ybor City. And Kate or Abby, if you disagree with what I just said, please feel free to chime in. But I think what I said is accurate. Okay.
Councilman Dingfelder, I agree with what you said. The applications can be filed. Whether or not they get approved by City Council, depending on compatibility and other issues, that would be a separate discussion.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I agree. I'll chime in to agree. And that being said, that is your jurisdiction today, and that is not changing. So you are familiar with that from a number of the different projects. One that I keep using is an example at the corner of Willow and Cass that came before council. Some of you were on council at that time. Some of you were not. The first time it came, it did have mixed use components. You all talked about that, what was appropriate, what really constituted mixed use. I believe the project was denied the first time, came back having listened to the messages that were sent, the discussion that was had, and it did come back with a greater mixed use component. One of the things behind the mixed use is that it creates those other uses that offset the additional density. So if you're having a use on the same property, that trip that is in a single use property that would be leaving the property to access the non-residential components may now stay within the property and be able to access the dry cleaner or the coffee shop or the other non-residential uses that are being integrated into the project, and actually achieving that intention of mixed use and that internal capture to some of those impacts that are associated with single-use development.
Councilman Vieira.
Thank you, sir, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it. And, you know, and again, for me, my concerns are not a matter of substance in as much as they are a matter of procedure. You know, when you look at something that like this, which is citywide, I want to make sure that there's no unintended consequences. You know, if this goes forward today, and people, you know, here should 100% vote their conscience, and that's 110% right to do and whatnot. But I think it's incumbent on us, if this goes forward, because, you know, we'll do first reading, second reading, et cetera, to, you know, all of us do our due diligence in terms of inquiring with different communities, because that's something, and maybe I missed it, but I didn't know if outreach had been done to numerous communities. I'm trying to reach out to North Tampa, Tampa Innovation, different groups, and just make sure that there's no unintended consequences with this. So again, for me, with the information that I have, I think this is a good plan amendment. This should go through the plan amendment process. I think that there are other concurrent things that we can do on this: invest in infrastructure, support all for transportation, go through the text amendment process. And by the way, we're getting American Relief Act dollars of over $80 million, some of which can go to some of these legitimate concerns throughout our city. So again, mine is a matter of procedure, not as much on substance. But again, members should 100% vote their conscience, and I know that a lot of folks have put in a lot of work on this, and I'm appreciative of that. Thank you.
We have a motion from Councilman Dingfelder with a second from Councilmember Goods. Roll call vote. And this is for the IDCO, as I call it, just not to.
Put it on for first reading.
It'll be for a May 6th first reading. Motion from Councilman Dingfelder, second from Councilman Goods. Roll call vote.
Vieira,
I reserve the right to change in the future if this comes up on first reading, but I will vote no for today.
Goods, Dingfelder,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Citro,
I also reserve my right, and I'll vote yes today.
Miranda,
No.
and Maniscalco.
No.
Motion carried with Vieira, Miranda, and Maniscalco voting no.
Thank you very much. That's it for the agenda. And there's no night meeting. And it's 2:20. All right, new business. Councilman Miranda, do you have anything, sir?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Miranda, right? I just want to wish a belated birthday to a dear friend of baseball. He belonged in the Hall of Fame. Pete Rose turned 80 years old yesterday, and I just want to wish him a happy 80th.
I second that. Pete Rose, you know, I believe in forgiveness and moving on, and Pete Rose is one of those people. So happy birthday to him. Thank you, sir. Anything else?
That's it, sir.
Councilmember Carlson.
Couple things. I've had meetings with the walk bike people and the sidewalk stompers and also developers. Yesterday we had a meeting of a bunch of them together, talking about ways that we could build a new sidewalk policy that is put together by consensus, similar to the tree one a couple years ago that was unfortunately undone by the legislature. Anyway, that process is proceeding, but in the meantime, there is a problem that we've seen where if a homeowner does not have a sidewalk in front of their home and they're immediately across the street from a school, the city cannot, by I think state law, build a crosswalk from the school to that corner, and because of that, because there's no sidewalk on that piece of property, it's causing a lot of dangerous situations where kids and families cannot cross because we can't legally build crosswalks. So in consultation with, I know there's a sidewalk plan going on as part of the mobility exercise, and there's this thing that we're working on, but just to try to triage this immediate what I consider a dangerous situation. I would like to make a motion to ask the mobility staff to study the possibility of installing crosswalks and, where necessary, all-way stops or lights at every public school entrance exit in the city of Tampa from the school property to the immediately adjacent block. If crosswalks cannot be installed because there is not an existing sidewalk would be installed by the city to allow the crosswalk installation, and this would be reported back to council at the June 24th workshop to try to provide plenty of time.
Second.
Second from Councilmember Citro. That's a great motion.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, and to bring to council's attention, just so you know, there is next week's, April 22nd workshop, is a discussion of the sidewalks.
Yep.
So I guess, I don't know what the intent.
Yeah, this is a separate issue. It's
A separate
it's
issue.
connected,
Okay.
but
Okay.
this is a specific micro issue, and the issue is what to do about the places where we can't build crosswalks because there's not a sidewalk on the other side.
We have a
So,
motion
so
from-
are you requesting then the 24th of June? Is that what I heard? Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, the
Okay.
24th of June.
Now, the
workshop.
question, you presently have a commendation for Police Officer of the Month. You also have presently in June, the staff to present land development code amendments. I do not know how long that takes. Do you wish to schedule this for, let's say, that's set for 9 o'clock. Would you like to schedule this for 10 o'clock then?
It's okay with me.
Sounds good. Motion from Councilman Carlson, second from Councilman Citro. All in favor?
All right.
Aye. Any opposed? Yes, sir. Anything else?
Thank you. And then one more. You may have seen what I think is very bad news. We knew this was coming, but the state legislature voted yesterday to require municipalities to force people to drink toilet water, essentially. And this governor was supposed to sign it as early as today. I haven't looked at the news to see if that was signed already. I mean, this is it's interesting for a Republican legislature and governor. This is fiscally reckless because it's going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars for each city. We're talking about $400 million plus $20 to $40 million a year in operating expenses. We don't need it. We have plenty of supply of water for 20, 30 years without having to drink toilet water. And I wish that city had lobbied against it, and maybe there's still a way to modify it, because unlike the rest of the state, we have Tampa Bay Water, we have a regional supply and a regional plan. We don't have the same problems the rest of the state has, and it's unfair that we're going to have to charge our ratepayers, $5 to $10 a month just so they can have the right to drink toilet water. And there is a workshop discussion coming up on Pure, which is the new name for toilet tap, on May 27th. I would like to I think we should have a separate discussion just about this legal issue. And apologies to Gina if this is too soon, we can schedule it later. But since the other thing is on May 27th, I think and that's on a specific time frame, I think we have to have a legal opinion by then. So I would suggest that this would come just before the other discussion, and ideally would be by an attorney who studies legislative issues separate from just water. But I would like to make a motion to ask city legal staff to report back to council at the May 27th workshop on the new state legislation regarding toilet to tap and its impact on the city of Tampa.
Let me just check the date.
Question on the motion.
Yes, sir, Councilman Dingfelder.
I'll consider seconding it, but if you could modify the word toilet to tap, just because I think it's a little inflammatory, and it kind of alludes to the fact that maybe we don't want it, or we do want it, and I haven't decided yet. So if there's a better term for that, I'm always up for, additional information. I think that's what you're looking for. Of course, we all want to be informed on what the statute does or doesn't say, and I'm all for that bill.
Yeah, and just so this is not an analysis of whether we should approve our own project. This is just an analysis of what the state is telling us we have to do.
What can we call it? Reclaimed water? Can we call it?
In the statewide reports outside of Tampa, they're calling it toilet tap. I mean, we can call it.
What's the legislation? What's the legislators?
I don't have it in front of me. How about if we call it converting wastewater to drinking water.
I'm fine with that, and I will second your motion.
Mr. Dingfelder, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Selman.
Yeah, I believe the legislative title uses the term reclaimed water.
Very good.
All right, reclaim water?
Bill,
Yes.
Correct.
reclaim water, okay?
Yeah, but I think it specifically says that it has to be used for drinking water. Am I not correct? For drinking, yeah.
That
But-
I don't know. I just, in other words, in reference to the type of water we're talking about,
So-
they refer to it as reclaimed
So
water.
anyway, we know that, do you know the legislation number that we could call it? Okay, sorry,
I can.
I should have had that.
In a
But
minute.
how about if we just called the state legislation regarding converting reclaimed water to drinking water? And then you're going to give us the legal opinion on it anyway, so you'll tell us what exactly it means or
I'll
doesn't.
second that amended motion.
All right, motion from Councilman Carlson, second from Councilman Dingfelder. This is for the May 27th workshop?
Yes.
All right, there's 3 at 9 o'clock, so we'll say for 10 o'clock.
And I would just suggest that it go before the presentation of Pure, because we need to know the state context.
So we'll
before we
keep
get-
it at 9 o'clock and we'll have it after the police officer of the month. So that'll be right before the Pure project.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So first on the agenda, right after police officer of the month. Motion from Councilman Dingfelder, motion from Councilman Carlson, second from Councilman Dingfelder, All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mr. Chair, I will support this simply because I really dislike preemption from Tallahassee, telling the cities what we can and cannot do. But I know that there will be millions of dogs in the state of Florida that will be very unhappy that cannot drink from the toilet.
That's why I drink Gatorade. All right, anything else, sir?
That's it. Thank you.
Councilman Goods, do you have anything?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for your leadership today. I'm going to be Mr. Vieira for a moment. I have a bunch of motions to make today.
All right, Councilman Orlando Vieira, your new business.
Gentlemen, back on April 1st, I made a motion in reference to the clerk's office. I needed to put a date on that, so I needed to put a date on that for a May 6th return by the administration regarding the April 1st motion regarding the clerk's office.
We have a motion from Councilman Goods, second?
Second.
Second from Councilman Citro, all in favor? Aye. Aye, all right, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, sir. The next motion I have, I attended a member of the AHAB board for the county, and I made a recommendation on Monday in reference to, this term we have in the development community, and a lot of folks have started using the word workforce, worker, or workforce housing. And to me, that word does not symbolize folks in our communities. You have what they call essential workers. And people are mixing two, because I know what certain individuals or certain professions make, and to me that's not workforce. To me, a workforce is an actual folks that work at the Walmarts, McDonald's, the Burger Kings. So what I'm asking, just like I asked the AHAB board to come back with a definition to define that and look at maybe changing that trend in name, so to clarify workforce from essential workers, because people need to understand that. So I'd like to make a motion for the Housing and Legal Department to define the term and the difference between essential worker and workforce worker. I would also like the administration to explain affordable housing and development of it in the city as it relates to both essential worker and workforce worker, and have that back on 624.
We have a motion. We have Mr. Shelby.
No, I just want to be clear, June 24th, is that a sufficient amount of time for it? Did you have an opportunity to?
I mean, it's 2 months. I believe it would. I mean,
Okay.
I would think that would be 2 months for that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we have, yes, Ms. Selman, you have your hand up?
Can
No?
you hear me?
Yes, we can, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Can you just clarify? I'm not sure I understood the motion. I apologize.
I'd like to make a motion for the Housing and Legal Department to define the term and difference between essential worker and workforce worker. I would also like the administrators to explain affordable housing and development of it in the city as it relates to both essential worker and workforce worker. And I'll have a copy of the motion with the exact verbiage for you.
Mr. Councilman Goods?
That is
624.
June 24th.
Which is a workshop day.
Yes, sir.
Mhm.
Let's put it for 10 o'clock, because we have
10
the-
o'clock is the same time as the sidewalks. Did you want to make it the next one up?
All right, 10:30.
Okay.
All right, 10:30? Is that all right?
It'll be fine, sir.
Motion from Councilman Orlando Vieira today. Second from? Who's the second?
I did.
Second is Councilman Citro. All in favor?
Last and final one, sir. As you know, you hear a lot of communities talk about gentrification and talking about people being uprooted. We have to have development. That's a must to bring up marginalized communities. But what I would like to make a motion for the legal department to look into a new zoning ordinance that would reduce the displacement of low to moderate income residents, and to look into the new Chicago, Illinois ordinance or any other cities around the nation that have taken the steps to reduce displacement of residents. I'm attaching the article to this motion for legal review, and would like it back on, if that's enough time, for June 24th. If I need.
All right, we have a motion from Councilman Goods. This is for June 24th. We'll put it at 11 o'clock on the workshop, just so everything is in order. Second from Councilman Vieira. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Anything else, sir?
That's it, sir. Thank you.
Councilman Citro.
Thank you very much. Request from the Planning Commission schedule a plan amendment adoption hearing for TA CPA 20-41, TA CPA 21-02, TA CPA 21-03, TA CPA 21-05, TA CPA 21-06, TA CPA 21-01, TACPA 2104, TACPA 2107, TACPA 2108 on June 4th, 2021 at 5:01 p.m. and direct legal department to provide the city clerk with a form of notice for advertising to the public hearings.
Is that date?
We have
Sorry.
a June 3rd regular meeting. You said June 4th?
It's June 24th
Oh, okay. At 5 p.m.?
at 5:01.
5:01 p.m., yes, sir? All right, perfect. We have a motion from Councilman Citro. Do we have a second?
Second, I
Second
think.
from Councilmember Vieira. All in favor?
Yeah.
Any opposed? All right, anything else, sir?
Yes, sir. Councilman, I had the pleasure of meeting with some lovely people at the Beach Park Homeowners Association, and among many things that they had discussed with me and talked with me, the number one thing that they had asked about was the closure of Ward Street from Kennedy Boulevard to West Cleveland Street. Now, during all this discussion, I found out that this street was closed, opened, and closed yet again, all before any of us were on council, regardless. So my motion, sorry, Vic B-Day, is to have staff, more particularly mobility, to appear regarding the closure of South Ward Street from West Kennedy Boulevard to West Cleveland Street on May 20th under staff report.
Question on the motion.
Yes, sir.
And
Go ahead.
I'll second it. Interesting history on that closure is half that neighborhood wants it closed and half of it wants it open. If you live close to it, you want it closed, and if you live further away into Beach Park, you want it open. But anyway, I'm definitely, I hear you, Joe, and I'll second your motion.
Well, and before we take a vote, there were a few people that during the discussion said that they were all right with it, but again, dialogue solves everything. And if we can get the specific reasons why, maybe we can all understand. But again, all this was done before I became part of council, and I'd like to hear about it before I hear any more from the Beach Park community.
Yes, sir. We have a motion from Councilman.
No, I wanted to say the same thing that Mr. Dingfelder said, is that I had an earful a few months ago that my understanding is that that was vacated and privately owned, but it was not closed. And there's a large fraction of people that want it closed. And so as long as this conversation is going to be open to both sides, then I would vote for it, right? It's not.
Well, I'm just looking to hear from staff reports.
Yeah, okay.
Do we have a second?
That's all I want right now.
Was there a second?
Councilman Dingfelder.
Dingfelder with the second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Anything else, sir?
Happy birthday, Joe Greco.
Pete Rose, Joe Greco. Big birthdays. Councilman Vieira, yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. You know, I wanted to just say about this council that we just went over this plan amendment issue and the application now, and I just wanted to commend everybody for, you know, everybody's thoughtful statements and whatnot, and it's an issue that ignites a lot of passion, and I think we did it in the dialogue in a you know, responsible way, and I just want to say I think that's important. I got 3 in typical Luis Vieira fashion motions, if I may.
Yes,
First off is, you know, the Urban League of Hillsborough County has just come into fruition, led by Stanley Gray and Nicholas Glover, and you know they have such a wonderful prospective role to play in Tampa, and I'd love to have them come on, if the calendar holds it, on June 17th of 2021 for like 5-10 minutes, whatever, just to come talk about what they are looking to do in our community and ways that, you know, the city can assist them in their wonderful mission.
5 or 10 minute presentation at
Yes,
the
sir.
beginning?
Mhm.
All right, we'll do that. You want 10 minutes?
Sure.
All right.
Second.
Motion from Councilman Vieira for June 17th under ceremonial activities, and second from Councilman Citro. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, yes, sir.
And then I do this every year. I always like to invite a Gold Star parent to come. We have Memorial Day coming up, and if I may, I think it is May 27th is our council meeting before Memorial Day.
It is May 27th is a workshop.
Is it okay to have a couple minutes before for?
Yeah, or May 20th is a regular meeting, but whichever, you know.
May we do May 27th? Would that be okay? Or, I mean, is it okay procedurally to have someone speak on May 27th?
It's a workshop. I mean, why not? Why not?
Thank you. I appreciate it. If I may, and I'll discuss it with the families and who they want. Last year we had Craig Gross. Year before we think also had Craig Gross. But in this year we may get our friend Craig Gross again. God bless him. But if I may, I make that motion.
Second.
Is there a time involved, a length of time that you want to attach to that?
Again, just 10 minutes for the whole thing.
Yeah. And Craig Gross is a great guy. So if it's him, good.
Nope.
Councilman Vieira with the motion. Second from Councilman Citro. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Yes, sir.
And then just lastly, if I may, y'all may have read in the news by C.T. Bowen on the discussion being held in the county commission on the New Tampa Performing Arts Center. It's something that has been in the works for about 17 years, which was mostly a county initiative with regards to funding. We did rezoning on it. In fact, Chairman Maniscalco and Councilman Miranda may remember this in 2017. It was a couple weeks after I got into Tampa City Council on the Hunters Lake project and whatnot. But now there's becoming a dispute you may have read about in the Tampa Bay Times on whether or not the county's going to fund it. It's a large project that means a lot to the people of New Tampa. And then something that came up in the discussion that I think is so pivotal is whether or not the city of Tampa will help out with the reasonable maintenance costs, which are believed to be $200,000-$300,000 a year, whether or not we'll, just fund a portion of that. And, there was a belief, I guess, in the county commission that the city of Tampa had said no to assisting with it, and that's true and yet not consistent with the present reality, which is the prior administration, according to what I've been told, the Buckhorn administration said no. This administration has not, according to the information that I have presented to me, been presented with a request. So I would like to make a motion for Tampa City Council to request that the Castro administration engage with the county out of the for maintenance assistance of one kind or another. Again, not putting a dollar, reasonable maintenance assistance for the New Tampa Performing Arts Center out of the, and I'm sorry, I wrote down here through the Social Action and Arts Fund process, and any process that may be available to get those funds. And again, this is not prospectively a big budget allocation. You're probably talking about $50,000, $75,000 just for the Castro administration to engage with them on that, because it's so important to have the city of Tampa fund and subsidize arts throughout all of the city of Tampa. And I think this goes a step in that regard. Ecuador.
Councilman Vieira has a motion. Second from Councilman Citro. All in favor? Any opposed?
Thank you.
Councilman Dingfelder. Yes, sir.
Nothing today.
Okay. And since we're on the birthday thing, happy 62nd birthday to my father yesterday. 62. Wow, just a kid, just a kid. So, huh? Yeah, I'm only 22, so, you know.
Oh, and if,
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, if I may, that tomorrow, I think at 1:45, because some council members had expressed interest in coming, we were going to be honoring, I think out here at City Hall, Luis Campuzano and Colonel Orlando Rodriguez, who are Bay of Pigs veterans for their service, including in the United States military, Army, and Navy, because it's the 60th anniversary of the Bay of Pigs invasion. And whatnot, and I know some council members had expressed interest in going, so just if anyone does, just please inquire. Yes, sir, Councilman. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Shelby, any new business?
No, sir, just a motion to receive and file.
Motion to receive and file? Anybody? Councilman Vieira with the motion, second from Councilman Carlson. All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned.